Hello, this is Edsel here presenting from Toronto, Canada. My master's thesis is on the prevailing opinion of lethal autonomous weapons and the probability of their use per country. Lethal autonomous weapons, or LAWs, are robots that can independently detect, select, attack, and/or kill targets without direct human oversight. LAWs, colloquially referred to as killer robots or slaughter bots, can manifest in diverse formats, including walking robots, flying drones, planes, tanks, ships, or submarines. LAWs are distinguished from conventional drones, which require human authorization prior to target termination. At present, fully autonomous lethal weapons have not been deployed in open warfare, but there are at least 381 types of semi-autonomous land, sea, and air weapons in at least 12 states. Fully autonomous LAWs are the third revolution in warfare, with the first revolution being gunpowder and the second nuclear weapons. The opinion on LAWs is greatly divided. The UNCCW and the Campaign to Stop Killer Robots seek to ban all lethal autonomous weapons. Their arguments against the use of LAWs include that they violate the rules of war, including distinction, proportionality, precaution, and that there's a great accountability gap with respect to jus and bello. The lightning-fast LAWs might increase soldier and civilian casualties, or perhaps be abused by unaccountable governments and insurgents with possible hacking for unintended purposes. LAWs are an affront to human dignity. Machines shouldn't be allowed to make life or death decisions. LAWs might start another arms race. At least 25 countries support the UN ban, but at least 7 nations, including the USA, Russia, Israel, United Kingdom, France, and South Korea and Australia, refuse to genuflect to this agreement. China remains strategically ambiguous in its intentions, and this poses a significant threat for the changing landscape of warfare. Now, others ardently support the use of LAWs, especially if it can decrease soldier and civilian casualties and is properly regulated. Reasons for supporting LAWs include their utility as a force multiplier that can control inhospitable or dangerous situations such as minefields or bioterrorism attacks. Now, if rogue organizations acquire LAWs, it's important that security forces have appropriate technology to protect its citizens. LAWs may actually make it easier to follow international humanitarian law if it makes military actions more precise and reliable. And this results-oriented argument is the primary ethical reason for considering the use of LAWs. LAWs don't rape, they don't retaliate in anger. LAWs can be programmed to investigate dangerous situations before firing, unlike a nervous human soldier who, out of self-preservation, might be inclined to shoot first and ask questions later. LAWs can be less expensive than human armies. And although at present machines are not sentient in their actions, artificial intelligence improves every year. Optimization software might allow machines to be transferred to conscience or instilled with positive values. Now, with this background knowledge in place, my research questions are: 1. What is the prevailing opinion on the use of LAWs? 2. Is there an attitudinal difference between LAWs and used for defensive purposes versus offensive purposes? And 3. Which countries have the highest probability of using LAWs? My hypotheses were that there will be mixed opinions on the use of LAWs, with the majority opposing LAWs. LAWs used exclusively for defense will be more accepted than LAWs used for offense. And 3, the likelihood of a country employing LAWs can be estimated from 5 variables, which include the country's compliance with the UNCCW ban, the country's global peace index, financial military expenditures, the amount of cybercrime or cyber expertise in the country, and 5, the present use of military drones. What's the importance of the research? With respect to Hague Law and the laws of armed conflict, the Martens Clause states that in cases not covered by law and force, civilians and combatants remain under the protection of the principles of humanity and the dictates of the public conscience. The applicability of the Martens Clause remains relevant in modern times. Even in 1996, the International Court of Justice Advisory Opinions on Nuclear Weapons stated that the Martens Clause has proved to be an effective means of addressing the rapid evolution of military technology, and as such has similar application to lethal autonomous weapons. Now, surveys are a useful method to determine the public opinion on what is deemed permissible in armed conflict. Constructivist research has not yet formulated a substantial normative base for accessing the ramifications of laws. Such norms could calibrate new standards for appropriate conduct in global security policy, lex lata, and lex ferenda. If laws violate the public conscience provision of the Martens Clause due to widespread public opposition, it might implicate that laws are illegal under international standards. However, the military utility and context in which laws are used might alter this normative opposition, and this thesis explores some of these contextual factors. Predicting which countries are at highest risk of using laws can direct security considerations in diplomacy towards conflict prevention. An online survey was constructed to answer the 3 research questions. To maximize survey participation, we kept the responses anonymous with a projected survey completion time of 4 minutes. To prevent missing data, the survey instrument did not advance unless each question was answered. Survey requests were distributed by email to students, staff, and internet groups at 6 universities, including the University of Catalonia and the University of Toronto. Military veterans in North America and the Canadian Conference of Defense Associations Institute was asked for help, as well as lay people and clerical staff in Toronto. The United Nations Canada, the Canadian government ministers, and the Banned Killer Robots group were contacted more than 3 times each, but unfortunately did not participate. There were 7 core survey questions. 11-point Likert scales were used for most of the multiple choice opinion questions to increase sensitivity and approximate interval level of scaling and normality and minimize measurement error. That is, parametric statistics are more accurate with categorical data if there's an 11-point scale than, say, with smaller scales. Now, the first 5 questions were: 1. Do you feel lethal autonomous weapons should be allowed? 2. Do you feel lethal autonomous weapons should be used for defensive purposes? 3. Do you feel stationary lethal autonomous weapons should be used for defensive purposes? 4. Do you feel lethal autonomous weapons should be used for offensive purposes? And 5. Do you feel that lethal autonomous weapons with facial recognition software should be used for offensive purposes? Okay. The order of the question presentation was not randomized to preserve a logical sequence of questions and for comparison. Question 6 asked the most important reason for choosing either pro or con for laws. Question 7 used the Survey Planet's ranking format to determine which predictor variable was most important for determining the risk of a country participating in lethal autonomous weapons use. The ranking platform limited the maximum number of response levels to 7 ranks for this particular question. The survey ran for 3 months, and each group was canvassed at least 3 times. At study close on December 25, 2018, there were 273 responses, which corresponds with a survey margin error of 5.9%. 40% of the respondents were male, and 61% were greater than the age of 35. The median time expended for survey completion was 4.2 minutes. Now, the proportion of survey respondents in each category is shown in the pie graph. The majority of the survey respondents were from the health or allied health field. 18% had political science training, 11% a military background, and 13% from the general public. In 43% of the surveys, the software was able to determine the respondent's country of origin. 70% of the surveys originated from the United States and Canada, and 19% from Europe. Now, due to the imbalances in the background of the survey respondents and the unequal gender ratio, survey weighting was performed with inverse probability weighting. There was at most 4.5% difference in the weighted versus unweighted survey results, so they're pretty close still. Using the weighted analysis, which should be more accurate, most respondents were against the overall use of laws, with 55% proportion on the weighted analysis and 60% on the unweighted analysis. On the weighted analysis, 10% of the respondents were neutral or undecided, and 35% were in favor of laws. Now, there are no non-parametric survey analysis statistical tests available on Stata 15.0, which is a dedicated statistics program. The survey responses were not continuous data with equal numeric increments, but given the survey scale had 11 subdivisions, parametric analysis of proportions was performed to compare the different contexts of law. In addition, a non-parametric analysis of the unweighted survey data was also performed. Both parametric and non-parametric techniques gave the same results, with statistically significant support for the use of laws for defensive purposes compared to laws in general and laws for offensive purposes. There was no statistically significant difference for stationary defensive laws versus defensive laws, or laws for offense compared to laws in general, and laws for offense compared to laws for offense with facial recognition software. Now, these box plots show the contextual comparison of laws on a graphical basis. So once again, the y-axis from 0 to 10 means that 0 meaning that they're never agreeing with the use of lethal autonomous weapons, 5 being neutral, and 10 designating complete agreement with autonomous weapons. In each box plot, the horizontal line near the middle is the median response. Now, the blue box plot is for the overall opinion on the use of lethal autonomous weapons. There's a median response level of 3, and this corresponds with probably no in terms of the agreement level. The greenish blocks show lethal autonomous weapons for defensive purposes, and you see the median response level here is 6, and that is at a level of probably a bit more yes than no to the use of laws. You see for stationary laws, the lower interquartile range is more compact than defense laws overall, indicating less disagreement with laws for stationary purposes. Laws for offense had similar results to laws in general, but when facial recognition software is added, the box plot outline suggests that fewer people were opposed. Now, in subgroup analysis using non-parametric tests, there was greater support for laws from respondents with a military background, but no statistically significant difference in terms of gender analysis or age. Of the respondents that were opposed to laws, the most common argument against its use was that machines shouldn't be allowed to make life or death decisions, and 2, laws might increase civilian casualties. Of the respondents supporting laws, the most common reason for their support was that laws might decrease soldier casualties and laws might increase the strength and efficacy of the military. To ascertain external validity, the results of this survey was compared with previously published reports. Using 2 sample tests of proportions, there was no statistically significant difference between the results of my small survey compared to the 3 largest surveys in the literature. The Open Roboethics Institute survey had a statistically significant larger proportion of respondents who opposed lethal autonomous weapons. A random effects made analysis of proportions of the aforementioned studies yielded a point estimate that 59% of people oppose laws, with a 95% confidence interval of 53% to 64%. However, the heterogeneity is excessive at 93% and suggests that the roboethics survey cannot be included with the other studies. Substituting the 2019 Ipsos survey for the 2017 one only increased the point estimate by 1%, and my survey remains within the confidence interval. The roboethics survey was further scrutinized for heterogeneity. In their study, the word death was placed directly in the survey question. The survey question was in a quadruple compound format, simultaneously asking about defensive versus offensive weapons, plus opinion on the development versus the use of laws. Furthermore, the options may have been forced because there was no option for neutral or undecided participants who could only choose the other option. Also, the survey participants in the roboethics survey seemed to be younger than the ones in our survey, although there was an almost identical proportion of subjects with a military background. The 2019 Ipsos interest group sponsored survey claimed there was an increased opposition to lethal autonomous weapons compared to the 2017 survey. This may or may not be true, as there are potential confounders that render comparison of the 2 surveys problematic. So from a literature review on laws and literature review of the determinants of war, it was hypothesized that a country's propensity to develop or use laws could correlate with 5 predictors. The compliance or rejection of the UN ban, a country's global peace index as determined by the Institute for Economics and Peace, country's military budget per capita from the SIPRI database, SIPRI, country's cyber insecurity, which reflects cyber technology capabilities and the ability to control the sanctioned or unsanctioned domestic development of laws. Now, the maximum cybersecurity index from the International Telegraph Union was normalized to 1, and its complement probability was used as a cyber insecurity index. The country's current use of military drones was also considered an important factor. The respondents ranked the relative importance of the predictors in the descending order shown in the table. The survey scores were used to weight the beta coefficients in the multiple regression formula, which incorporated the country data from the different databases. The multivariable linear regression formula conjectured that Israel, USA, Saudi Arabia, Somalia, Russia, France, South Korea, United Kingdom, Niger, Iraq, Jordan, Singapore, Italy, China, and North Korea were the 15 countries most likely to use laws, even though Iraq had signed the UNCCW ban. Nations that have not declared their outright intentions on law, listed in black on this list, are potentially malleable and should be lobbied to sign the UN ban. For comparison, here are the lowest ranked countries according to our risk analysis. An interactive heat map is available, which corresponds with the data in the table in terms of risk stratification by country. Now, the constraints of this non-funded research project, which was commenced in May 2018, only allowed a survey sample size of 273, which corresponds with a 5.9% margin of error rather than the ideal 5% or less. Our online survey had potential coverage areas. The survey was voluntary, and as with all surveys, non-response errors can occur with only individuals who feel strongly about laws responding to the survey. The strengths of our analysis, the statistics in our studies were rigorous and unequivocally support our first 2 hypotheses. And there's also strong concurrent validity with the published literature. Now, although the linear regression formula cannot be formally tested, the predictor variables have face validity and construct validity, and they make forecasts to aid in preventive diplomacy. The particulars of laws under international humanitarian law with respect to distinction, proportionality, imminence, necessity, etc. Still require clarification and testing. Curbing lethal autonomous targeting or the strict regulation of laws may be a more viable alternative than a complete ban on laws. The United Nations might broker alternative agreements regarding the acceptable degree of human control over weapons. Future surveys might explore the contextual acceptance of laws if the weapons were restricted to lower levels of autonomy or lethality. So in conclusion, with regards to the second revolution of warfare, Albert Einstein opined, it's become appallingly obvious that our technology has exceeded our humanity. Laws are the third revolution of warfare with the same humanitarian, moral, ethical, and legal entanglements as nuclear weapons, but the added complication of easy accessibility in comparison to an atomic bomb. The Martens Clause asseverates the importance of public opinion and therefore survey research in developing normative opinions, lex lata and lex ferenda, regarding the use of laws. This study reaffirms that 55% of survey respondents opposed the use of laws, which was almost identical to the findings of the 2 largest surveys in the literature and compatible with the point estimate of our meta-analysis. The meta-analysis has not been previously reported on this topic, I believe. Although the majority of public sentiment appears to oppose laws, this normative opinion is contextual and changed when the application was for defense. In our survey, laws for defensive purposes was supported by 54% of the survey respondents. As such, blanket rejection of laws are myopic if laws can be regulated and decrease civilian and soldier casualties. It would allow a diversion of funds normally consumed by militaries towards humanitarian and sustainability goals. In this survey, the most commonly cited reason for supporting laws was if it could decrease casualties of soldiers and civilians. The many failed attempts of the UNCCW, the irrepressible advancement of technology, and widespread use of gateway technologies such as drones and semi-autonomous armaments suggest that laws will be inevitable. Even if a ban or treaty on laws was ratified, non-state actors would not and state signatories may not comply with the agreements. This in no ways implies we should be despondent. We should redouble our efforts in a collaborative international dialogue for the regulation of laws and artificial intelligence based on normative opinion, morality, humanity, and international law so that we can optimize the security and peace of our collective global future. The United Nations peacekeeping forces are spread very thin and at times unwilling to act, and they've faltered egregiously in numerous incidents including the Tutsi massacre in Rwanda, the Muslim genocide in the Srebrenica, and the rape victims in South Sudan. There would be much irony in the ban on laws if in the future, Blue Beret fully or almost fully autonomous weapons became the economically viable security force multiplier required by UN peacekeeping forces. Forecasting has always been a central aspiration in the study of international relations. This study predicts the countries at higher risk for deploying laws using factors in addition to the proposed UNCCW ban. The country risk stratification provides direction as to where diplomatic interventions, regulations, and perhaps international armament verification strategies may be best targeted to promote peace and conflict prevention. I thank you very much for your attention. I apologize for the many statistics in this presentation, but I want to unequivocally show that the first two research hypotheses are supported and the third prediction hypothesis is grounded in facts and logic. Thank you.